Fantastic. Well, we have begun broadcasting, so welcome everyone who is beginning to tune in now from all across the world. Give us a couple of minutes, go grab yourselves a glass depending on where you are. I think daytime drinking is okay right now. Our winemakers all have a glass of something, so I think it's allowed. I think it is allowed. All got a little something in our glasses for the wines that we are going to explore today. But yeah, we've got about 1 or 2 minutes before we begin. This is that wonderfully awkward moment where we know we begin in about 2 minutes and we're forced to fill chat somewhere and somehow. A minute ago, we were actually just talking about winery dogs. And I think just about everyone, all of our winemakers today have a dog, at least at their winery or at their home. And they also all have, I'm sure, a winery dog book. I think Evyn's laptop's sitting on 4 dog books right now, which is quite impressive, I must say.
Absolutely.
And then Laura has a little puppy running around somewhere, yeah. I believe.
She's behaving right now. Look at her.
Oh.
Oh.
Look at that. So how old?
She is 10 weeks old only.
10 weeks old.
10 weeks. And
That's when
it's dust from the vineyards. I shouldn't because it's too little to bring her with me, but it's okay.
How many phone wires have been chewed through so far?
Not really. She's into papers and leaves and rocks. So
rocks.
Not many cables right now. So we'll say cords. We'll see in the next weeks.
Oh, bless.
Say hi.
Well, we got 1 or 2 minutes more. I'd say 1 more minute. We'll start at 2 minutes past, just allowing people to join. But as I say, welcome from all around the world. We've got people in Europe. We've got people who are staying up late in Asia. We've got people over in America. I believe there's a couple of people from Australia here as well. So go and grab yourselves a glass, get comfortable. And we are about to celebrate wine on earth momentarily. And in the meantime, we can keep looking at cute dogs. Victoria, you have a dog as well, don't you?
I do. Well, I actually lost him 2 years ago. And I don't know that I'll get another. But Meredith, the general manager, she brings her dog up to the winery, and he's like a double doodle, which is
a double doodle.
What they're called, but he's so cute, and his eyes are so sweet. So I get to play with him and take him for walks every now and again.
Does a double doodle have lots of fluff? Is that a very fluffy dog? Okay, currently shaved. I love it. Well, I tell you what, it is 2 minutes past. I think we've given everyone a little bit of time to come on board and join. So I think that I will take a sip of my wine here and then I will get started. There we go. We have christened this panel talk. So welcome everyone who is on with us today, and welcome to this panel discussion celebrating wine on earth. I'm joined by 4 incredible winemakers today. We've got Victoria Coleman, we've got Evyn Cameron, we've got Laura Diaz, and we've got Kale Anderson with us. And first of all, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Aidy Smith, so I'm a TV presenter for the Amazon Prime TV series, The 3 Drinkers. Now, my other 2 comrades and I, comrades should I say, travel around the world, and we go to countries and we find the people, the places, the drinks, and a lot of that has to do with place, which is quite nicely fitting in with the theme of today, which is all about place. So how tonight's going to work? I'm going to ask a variety of questions to our lovely panel. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of history and tell you a little bit about Napa. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit of history about our wonderful winemakers. Then we're going to delve into some questions alongside tasting some lovely wines from our friends on the panel today. So the first thing I guess I want to talk about, and I know we've got a lot of people on this panel today, or should I say this talk today, and people who live in Napa and know a lot about Napa, and others who don't necessarily know a lot about Napa. So let me just give you a tiny overview here. When we talk about Napa as a sense of place, what can we say? Well, it's 30 miles long and it's just a few miles wide. And within Napa, there are so many different microclimates, different soils and different terroirs, which hit the nail on the head when it comes to place. And because of this, it makes it perfectly suited for growing amazingly fine wine grapes. So we're talking about everything from Cabernet Sauvignon to Merlot to Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, don't know if I already said that, Zinfandel, Cab Franc, the list, it really goes on. And what you have are so many unique places within just one place. It was also one of the first agricultural preserves in the whole of America. And the amazing thing about that is that it basically protects wine growing heritage for all future generations. You can't just, build here. There are so many different things that you have to go through in order to be able to call your wine or call Napa home to your winery. So what can we say about the scale of Napa? Well, roughly about 4% of all of California's wine production comes from Napa. That's not a lot, but it may be the smallest wine growing region in California, and quite frankly, in one of the ones in the world, but it's one of the most recognized in the world as well. It's famous for low yields and really high quality wines. We can also talk about green and sustainability, and Napa has really been pioneering its environmental leadership for decades and decades, long before, the buzzwords came around for green and sustainability, so to speak. And if we look at climate, Napa has what's called a dry Mediterranean climate, which only about 2% of wine regions in the world have. What does this mean? It means consistent vintages because of similar weather patterns and great winemaking skill, which year on year are producing fantastic wines. We can also talk about the unique geology. So we mentioned microclimates beforehand, and Napa really is home to some of the most unique soils in the world, which is why some of the best grapes grow here as well. There's many different things I could say. I'm not going to, talk too much because we want to hear from our lovely winemakers as well. The last thing I'll say is that 95% of the wineries in Napa are family owned, which I think is quite frankly amazing. And year on year, you get incredible talent from all over the world visiting, coming to Napa to make wine, like the folks we've got here, which brings us on to you. So I'm just going to briefly go through the history of our panel tonight. And then what I'll do is pass you over to them so that they can tell you about what they're doing now. So first of all, we've got Victoria. Victoria, just give us a little wave there. Hello, Victoria. So Victoria graduated from UC Davis and started off a career in Napa working at Stag's Leap wine cellars. But the travel bug kicked in, Europe was calling, and in 2008, she went off to France to work at Chateau Mouton Rothschild over in Bordeaux. Quite impressive. But the travel bug still wasn't over, so off she went in 2010 on her journey to China, where she was winemaker at Jade Valley Winery. Returning to Napa in 2015, she's one of Napa's most exciting new winemakers, and she is winemaking right now at Lobo Wines, with a big focus on Napa Valley, Atlas Peak, and she's got her beautiful Cab Sauv, Pinot Noir, Rosé, and her proprietary blend, should I say, called Howl. So hello, Victoria. It's very nice to have you here. Very nice to have you indeed. And Evyn, would you give us a little wave there? So hello, Evyn. So Evyn began her career working at Thomas Keller's 3 Michelin star restaurant per se in Manhattan. Like me, she is completely obsessed with sensory experiences with food and drink. And so on Christmas Day 2009, she decided to just pick up everything, come to Napa and pursue a career in winemaking. Since then, she's worked everywhere from White Rock Vineyards and Saintsbury, CV Vineyard over in Howell Mountain, and even got the travel bug, who would have guessed, went over to New Zealand to Carrick Winery, where she worked in Central Otago. She then came back and was working at Cliff Leddy and Napa Wines, and where she is right now at Crocker&Starr. So hello, Evyn. Hello, hello. Now we've got Laura. So hello, Laura, give us a wave. Hello, hello. We're going to call you Puppy Laura at the end of this because of that cute little dog as well. You're going to have a little panel discussion nickname. So Laura was born in Madrid and always had a passion for science. So it was in this field that she studied at university. However, she went and took an internship working with a really well-known consultant winemaker in Spain. And this produced this brand newfound passion that she had with everything to do with the grape. And so she decided to get a master's degree in enology and viticulture. She then worked in La Mancha in Spain at Finca Otero with one of the Masters of Wine, Jane Masters, I believe, focusing on Tempranillo and a variety of other Spanish grapes. Then she also got the travel bug and went over to Marlborough in New Zealand, working at Isabella Estate Vineyards, and she wanted to perfect her Sauvignon Blanc skills. Fast forward a little bit, and she began her journey to Napa, where she still is now, working as associate winemaker with Chris Carpenter at Jackson Family Wines, where she was for 10 years, working on brands like Cardinal, La Jolla, Mount Brave, and a lot of the luxury tier wines at Jackson Family. But in 2011, she thought, you know what? I want my own wine. So in partnership with Jackson Family, she launched Gallery. And this was basically a tribute to European style wines within Napa. In 2018, she has taken on her most recent position as winemaker and director of operations at Ehlers Estate, which is where she is now. And last but not least, we have the lovely Kale Anderson. Hello there, Kale.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. So Kale grew up quite locally, actually, in Sonoma County, and always had a big interest in nature and culture, which led him into the world of viticulture and enology. He started off in an internship at J Winery in Russian River and quickly progressed from there, working at Colgan, Terra Valentine, Cliff Leddy, and Palmer, which is where he scored as one of the youngest winemakers, a 100-point score wine from Robert Parker Jr. Very impressive. And it was the first perfect score rewarded to that winery in their 30-year history. So very, very good. From there in 2008, he thought, I'm going to go do my own thing now. I'm going to consult, and I'm going to basically, I love Rhone wines, so I'm going to make Rhone-inspired wines within Northern California. And so Kale Wines was born, where he's been working in Napa with his wonderful family ever since. So there is our introduction to our lovely panel. I shut up in a minute and let everyone else talk. Isn't that good? So what I'm going to do now is I'd love for our panel to just briefly tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. So if we could start off with Laura, please, just tell us a little bit about where you are now and what you're doing.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm very excited to be part of this panel. Right now I'm the winemaker at Ehlers Estate. It's a small estate in Santa Elena, which is the north of Napa Valley, not north, but almost there. It's one of the warmest areas here in Napa. And making Cabernet Sauvignons, Bordeaux varietals, mostly all estate produce. Small winery, managing almost everything. So yeah, enjoying the life in Napa.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that, Laura. Thank you. We're going to ask Kale now to tell us a little bit about himself.
Sure. So today I have Kale Wines, which is my passion project. I'm making Rhone varieties only in Napa. And I'm consulting for various different other wineries in Napa and Sonoma, making Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, everything across the board. So a little bit of everything. It's a pleasure to be a part of the Napa community. It's a beautiful community, not just a beautiful place, but a beautiful community. So, and thank you, Napa Valley Vintners, for having me, and Aidy for moderating today. Thank you so much.
You might not be thanking me at the very end. I might talk too much. Victoria, over to you.
So I am what I started out as, I guess, is a winemaker for small producers. So it's basically people with their own parcels, and they mainly sell off their grapes, but hold back small amounts for their own projects. So that's what I'm working with. And Lobo's one that I've been with for 13 vintage. I'm going into my 13th vintage now. So, and I'm doing 7 wines with them. I'm only their red winemaker. So I make a rosé for them, and their Chardonnay, they want me to take over. I haven't said yes to that yet, but it's something that I'm interested in. And I work with another small producer here in Napa, and I have weekly, since I'm not able to travel, I have weekly telephone conferences or video conferences with China, and so that keeps me pretty busy.
That's amazing. And I've had some of your red wines. I actually have one here that we'll be tasting tonight, and it is stunning. So I look forward to trying that out too. And people are asking questions. Don't worry, we will get to them. While our lovely panelists are talking, I'll be scrolling through to have a look at what's been asked and putting these back to everyone. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Evyn just to tell us a little bit about what she's up to now.
Yeah, so currently I'm the winemaker Crocker&Starr here in St. Helena as well. So it's a very small 4,000 case winery, all estate property. So I feel very fortunate for that level of control and history. So we make one Sauvignon Blanc and then 4 other reds currently. So mostly single varietals, or we actually do a Malbec blend as well from the property. So that's our current status.
Fantastic. Well, I have just noticed that my glass is empty, and I have a lovely Sauvignon Blanc in front of me from Ehlers Estate. So that hint means that it would be lovely for Laura just to tell us a little bit about. Okay, Kale's like, uh-oh, my phone just went off. Don't worry, that's what the mute button's for. Laura, would you mind telling us why you chose this wine today and how does it represent Napa Valley, going back to that sense of place?
Well, I'm very passionate about Sauvignon Blanc, and it's one of those varietals that has followed me everywhere I've been working since Spain. You know, I started working in a little winery in La Mancha, and I was making a blend of Sauvignon Blanc Verdejo, go figure. Then I went to New Zealand and I make Sauvignon Blanc. I actually have a small sort of months of harvest in Chile, and I made Sauvignon Blanc there. So when I came to Napa, I mean, I kind of like lean towards Sauvignon Blanc. And I think Napa is an amazing, just as you describe it, it's a very small valley, but it's so diverse. The soils, the microclimates, the terroirs, just the different elevations is very different and diverse. So that I think that creates that Sauvignon Blanc makes it a very fun wine to make. It's very versatile, it's very chameleonic. Depending on where it's made and the different style or wine styles that we can make it here. So that's why I chose it. And it's a wine that I really enjoy. It's the 4th grape planted in Napa. So there's quite a bit of Sauvignon Blanc in Napa. And it's getting a lot of popularity. I think it's a wine that a lot of people enjoy, and it can be made in a very elegant style as well. So that's why I chose it.
Well, thank you very much. Fantastic, very tasty, and a great sense of place as well. I've got one question here from, I think it's Ewan or Iwan. Please forgive me if I have pronounced that incorrectly. I'm terrible at names. Most people call me Iddy or Addy, but it's Aidy. So I get it all the time as well. One of your questions was about European approaches within Napa. I think as we get towards the end of this panel discussion, that's something that Kale is definitely going to pick up on. So I'll come back to that a little bit later on if you don't mind. But I'd love now to just kind of ask a first question on the panel. And this one's for Evyn. And it's, what was the first instance that you ever heard the word Napa mentioned?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to grow up with 2 parents who loved to travel and also drink a lot of wine and eat a lot of good food. So one of the first times I had heard of Napa is when I was traveling to Napa. So my parents brought me here maybe when I was around 13 years old. So I was really able to kind of experience what this sense of place had to offer at a younger age, being from the East Coast. So that was really the first time that that Napa meant something to me, and I thought about it.
Brilliant. And do you know what? I'm trying to think the first time I heard the word Napa, because with me being British as well and being, you know, a far cry away, it was definitely when I was in my teens, because I may have, in England, we drink wine, you know, when we're tall enough to reach the bar. So anyway, won't go there. I've got a question for Victoria, actually. So this is one of my favorite questions when it comes to different regions around the world. And if you could refer to Napa as a person, an actor, celebrity, historical figure, basically anyone in life, past or present, who would it be and why? What personality traits does Napa embody?
I come from a family that loves sports, and so I chose a sports figure, a legend actually, Michael Jordan. He's among the best basketball players in history. He was passionate and he was competitive. He had such like a never-ending sense of drive and determination. And I he always pushed his teammates to do, or just to be their best. And so I watched his documentary over the last month, and The Last Dance. And so a coach had said to him, you know, Michael, there's no I in team. And he said, well, there's an I in win. And so I think like that kind of, that's Napa Valley right there, where we have all these individuals who are just focused on what they're trying to do, and they share their knowledge and they collaborate with other winemakers. They share his passion or like his obsession, I guess, with being detailed and just being in the moment of what they're doing. He's just, his competitive nature, like we're competitive amongst or against one another here, but together we're competitive in the world of wine. So we stick together in that way. We share with each other. When you drive through Napa Valley, the landscape is just, it's seamless. The wines that come from here have such, I guess, effortless power and grace, and Napa is just charismatic and just gracious. So
I love it. I think you've answered that really well. And whilst I've got you on here as well, I'm going to ask you one more quick question. What are the major differences in your mind? And we'll keep this one quite quick because there's a lot more to get to, but it's a good question, so I want to ask it. What are the major differences, would you say, between wine from Napa and the wine from China that you've been working with?
Well, I think it started maybe with the materials. When I first started, they weren't doing the best job. I mean, they didn't know how to really, they were growing grapes, but they weren't so savvy with viticulture. That's improved over the years a lot. So the materials, one thing. The education, that was another. They have schooling over there, and it's different than what we may learn here, you know, so you kind of have to. So I think the education, the lack of patience, that's still kind of, they want something now, you know. But the wines, there's a Pinot Noir that grows around the winery. So I'm outside of Xi'an in the center of China. And so it grows Pinot Noir very well there. And I can feel it, I can tell it's Pinot. It's the soils, I don't know that were necessarily meant. The Merlot actually grows better there. They're heavy clay soils, but you get a sense of like that grape variety, like the true sense of that grape variety there. The cabs are coming up nicely, different regions, but they're exploding. I mean, they've progressed more quickly than I thought they ever would.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? Like just wine around the world. And, you know, if we went back 10 years ago or so, well, no, longer, maybe 20 years ago, no one would ever thought that wine could be produced there. Anyway, I know that today is about Napa, and I digress slightly, but it was a very interesting question. So I'm going to go back a little bit now, because we were talking about European style winemaking. And so I think it's perfect time. I'm just going to... Oh no, my glass is empty again. Well, that means that we must have a look at Kale Syrah. So why don't we move on to our next wine? Thank you very much for those answers there, Victoria. We are going to allow Kale now to show us his delicious wine, and hopefully he can give us a bit of insight into his European techniques within Napa as well, to answer that question from our audience.
Sure. So, Aidy, what you have there in front of you is the Hyde Vineyard Syrah. Comes from Larry Hyde and Sons Vineyard, which is in Carneros, the most southern part of the Napa Valley. It's much cooler. You know, there's a lot of Chardonnay, a lot of Pinot Noir planted there. I was specifically looking to make a cooler climate Syrah with this fruit. I make some big, large cabs and as well as Grenaches and Syrahs for other people. But for this new baby, which I started producing in 2016, I was really looking for a cooler expression of the fruit, and a cooler expression red-wise in my portfolio. So that's why I decided to go with Larry Hyde and Sons. Chris Hyde, his son, is a good friend of mine, and I've used a lot of Chardonnay of his in the past, and he had some old Syrah from the original home ranch right around the original homestead, and peeled off a few tons for me, and I've been making this Hyde Syrah ever since. So it's my newest baby, and it's a good example of, very little oak, not overly extracted, relatively low in alcohol, really fresh, more European-like from Napa. And I think it's a misconception in a lot of the world that Napa is only good at one thing. Now, Cabernet Sauvignon is king in Napa. That's that is what it is. That is the reputation that it's built, and comes well deserved. And I've made a lot of great Cabernets as well. But I've always been interested in the diversity of wines. Those are the original reasons why I got into the wine industry, is because I could express a diversity of ideas and flavors and profiles and textures, and celebrate diversity a little bit more, artistically. So Napa is a beautiful place to do that.
I think you've hit the nail on the head with that, my friend. This is an absolutely delicious wine. Something tells me that all 4 of the wines I'm going to have tonight may be very delicious. Who would have thought? Well, speaking of European nature of things and European style of wines, my next question is over to Laura. And so what I want to ask you is, what was it about Napa that made you want to move over there, or here where you are, to make wine in the first place? What was it about Napa that drew you to traveling over?
Well, I knew about Napa while I was studying the master degree in Madrid. My professor of viticulture was very passionate about California and about Napa. He did some collaboration with Davis, and just he was an amazing professor. Whenever he was speaking about something, you could feel the passion that he had, and I just was like intrigued about it. But when I traveled to New Zealand, I met another winemaker who worked in Napa, and she told me, it's like, you will love Napa. And it's something that for me, the difference is back then, vision Napa more, winemakers were more involved with the viticulture, with the vineyards. That's something that I think in Spain back then, or when I was working, there was a bigger separation. Winemakers, we weren't that much involved in the viticulture in the vineyards. So I wanted to be part of that portion of the production. And I was intrigued by that. But also to me, Napa, there's like so many opportunities. There are like so many people coming from all over the world, influences, that it just made it so interesting. And I had more opportunities, or I thought that I would have more opportunities than anywhere else. And I actually fell in love when I came here. I knew that I didn't want to go anywhere else. So,
well, you've certainly had a very impressive career, I will tell you that. And one thing that, for our lovely audience who are listening in now, so I've traveled around the world with my career, and I've met a lot of winemakers. And one thing that you always have to know about winemakers, our lovely winemakers, is their phones don't shut up. They are constantly called, because if you think about it, they've got so many different vineyards that they look after, and so many different wines that they're blending, and so many hundreds of people that need something from them at any one moment in time. So if more phones ring, don't worry about it. It's just one of those normal occurrences that tends to happen when we try and do these things. I have had about 3 different people ask if Evyn can also tell us which celebrity she thinks sums up Napa. So I have a feeling that this is a question that people want to hear an answer from. So Evyn, you probably have a good story here. That's what I'm guessing.
Honestly, I was racking my brain at work, and I think all 3 of those people are coworkers that brought that up, because they helped me come up with this particular person, which I totally believe in. And so what we came together on as a celebrity that represents Napa really well is Meryl Streep. And the reason for that is because she's timeless, she's versatile, she's elegant. She can hold her own in any situation. She's just kind of that tried and true, beautiful person. Creative, there's all these things that you could say about Meryl Streep that are good. So I think that she's actually a really good icon, representative of maybe a parallel to Napa, if you were to personify Napa.
Between Victoria and yourself, I think we need to get you on the TV show to do what my co-presenter Helena calls vinologies, because these are some fantastic vinologies. So very well done. Looks like we've got Kale back, which is great. Don't worry, Kale, you're not needed for another like 3 questions. So you're off the hook for a little bit. You're okay. My next question is another one for Victoria. Now, Victoria, you've obviously, as we've already figured out, you've traveled extensively. And one thing, and again, this is another one of my favorite questions actually. And one thing that happens when you travel extensively is you come to hear loads of different tasting notes based on the locality of these different wineries. So if you're in China, they'll have a particular type of food or something that's a daily occurrence to them that someone in Europe or the US is like, what the hell is that? And so my question to you is, tasting notes, they're of course very subjective. And based on where we live in the world, they can be very different. You've had extensive travels. So is there, in your experience, what has been the weirdest tasting note or something that's left an impression in your mind? You've overheard in the tasting room, it's been something that someone has said to you directly. Is there anything that you can think of?
So I don't know. I just think this is kind of funny, but there was someone who was pouring wine for 2 ladies in a tasting room, and he swirled his glass and he said, "This smells so good, you could put it behind your ears." And the woman like literally put the glass like behind her ear. And so I just thought that was funny. And he just meant like smells, perfumey or whatever. But nothing strange in China. They have they have different things that, they eat. And so they use a lot of descriptors that just, they're from their region and they're not familiar with what we would taste over here necessarily or smell, so nothing weird, just whatever applied, to their food or growing up. And yeah. Another quick one, just, I remember there was a magazine called Wine X, and it went out of publication for some time and started back up, but I think it was maybe early 2000 or late 90s, they described an SLV, Stag's Leap Wine Cellars SLV, as, I think they said Darth Vader and Elvira going at it in leather sheets, something crazy like that. So that's the kind of publication they are. So, yeah.
That's great. I mean, I was going to talk about petrol and Riesling, but you've just thrown that out of the park. That's amazing. Another fantastic answer, which in celebration of, I believe we should explore another wine. So it's over to Evyn with her lovely Cab Franc this time. So Evyn, why did you pick this wine and how does it show a sense of place to Napa?
Yeah, so Crocker&Starr is very fortunate to have the land that it does. Charlie purchased this land in the 70s, and the Cabernet Franc amongst all the other varieties that are here really stands out and can be a standalone grape. So obviously the history of Cabernet Franc is usually used as a blender or a majority of a blend, especially in France. But here we do it 100% Cabernet Franc, and Pam-Starr started that in 1996, which was its first vintage as Crocker&Starr label. So it really is a plush, very aromatic, as I'm sure you can kind of smell, Aidy, but yeah, it jumps out of the glass. It's a full body wine. It's not over the top though. It's very seamless, elegant, has those spicy cardamom notes that we like to say here. It just brings another dimension to the table that Cabernet Sauvignon would never do. And any other Bordeaux variety doesn't really compare to what this brings to the table. So it really can stand alone, and it's just another reason why Napa is special and unique. So.
Brilliant. I'm really happy that I decided to use my little caravan on all of these wines tonight, because I would have been very upset if I'd had to have opened them all and then not have been able to finish them off, because there's only little old me here, you know, four big bottles of wine. But so far, very delicious. And I can't wait to get to Victoria's wine as well. But before then, we have a couple more questions. Who would have thought? So Kale, you're back up again. If you want to put your phone on silent or anything, now might be the time. So your question, Kale, your question is, we talk about a sense of place. So the whole point today has been a sense of place. Now, what makes Napa Valley so special and so distinctive, would you say, when it comes to producing wine?
Well, I mean, you in your introduction, you kind of touched on this. Napa Valley is a very small place. It's a long, narrow valley, north-south, maybe slightly to the west at the very top. But in that small area, there is a huge variety of terroirs, soils, and varieties planted. It's a joy for me as a winemaker to have access to so many different lovely expressions of place. Napa's great at growing just about everything. I mean, we grow world record breaking pumpkins. This is a beautiful place to grow everything. You know, it's that diversity that I'm drawn to. Now, you know, I would say the diversity, it has you know, gone down and up over the years, depending on what it is in and out of style. But what it doesn't lose is the terroir, and its soils, its microclimates, and very different expressions in a very small geographical area. You know, I can tell you, you know, for most of my clients, I'm producing, you know, Cabernet Sauvignon and the traditional varieties, the international varieties. You know, for my own project, I focus exclusively on the Rhone varieties, Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre. You know, Grenache Blanc on the white side, and you know, make a Provençal-inspired rosé, mainly out of Grenache. But you know, I have other new projects coming online. One of them being taking a Japanese variety called Koshu, and we've now planted 5 acres here in the Napa Valley, mainly in cooler areas. We have it in Carneros, and we have it in Yountville. We have it a little bit on Mount Veeder. And we're going to make a dry, crisp, low alcohol, fresh, non-malolactic, non-oaked wine and sparkling wines. So it's a special place where we can really play with a lot of different things. And I think that's what makes it unique and special compared to other, you know, other areas on the earth. Don't get me wrong. The Rhone is one of my favorite places on the earth. You know, Spain is absolutely gorgeous. I've never been to China. I want to go, but you know, Napa has a very wide variety of expressions in a small geographical area, and that's why, you know, since I went to school, I've always been drawn to it.
Amazing. Well, you touched upon another question there as well that I was going to bring up later, which was if you could plant any grape variety in Napa, what would it be? So thank you. That was a really interesting question, and there's been a couple of people also asking the same question. So what I think we should do is, you know, Laura, do you also have an answer to that question? If there was one grape variety that you could plant within Napa from anywhere in the world, what would that be?
Well, back in the days, there's a lot of history about Riesling being planted here, and I was very fortunate of actually working with some Riesling from Spring Mountain, and it does so beautiful here. There's some areas in Napa that are very cool, that they have amazing soils, good shade, and are perfect for Riesling. It's very sad that there's no more planted, to be honest. So that would be my choice. My choice. I love Riesling. So
short and sweet. Great answer. Did you get the pun there? But all right, I'm going to ask the same question to Evyn, and then after that, I'm going to go straight over to Victoria so we can talk about her gorgeous Cabernet Sauvignon. So, Evyn, same question to you there. If you could plant any grape variety in Napa from anywhere in the world, even just to try it and see what happens as an experiment, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a tough question because, like Kale has so elegantly expressed, anything is already kind of planted here. So you could plant literally anything in Napa, and I think that we probably have the majority of the grapes here, including Riesling, which again I think would do super well in certain areas, which would be very exciting. Honestly, that's a really tough question to ask just because of that. So I feel like I have everything at my fingertips that are already here. Would I love to, kind of make a true port here and kind of have those varieties available? Like that would be super fun. Instead of a lot of people who make port in Napa kind of use other varieties to do that. So more of a traditional maybe style, and maybe getting, some more Italian varieties here that no one's ever heard of before. Because, there's hundreds and hundreds to speak of that exist there, but don't exist here. So maybe doing some experimentation in that realm would be interesting.
Amazing. Amazing. One thing that I am going to do is once Victoria's spoken about her wine, I'm going to come back to you all and ask you about what you think is a quintessential food pairing for your particular wines, for anyone who's seen what they are and is then going to go out and buy them so that then they can impress the hell out of people at dinner parties or just themselves in the mirror if they want to eat at home. Right, I'm going to finish this glass here. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And I'm going to move over to this beautiful bottle over here, and I absolutely adore everything to do with dogs and wolves, so this makes me very happy, Victoria. So please tell us a little about your lovely wine.
So this wine is comes from one of two estates that Lobo owns. So they own a valley floor vineyard in the Oaknell subappellation. This one comes from Atlas Peak, so it's hillside vineyard. I think there are five hillsides within the within the appellations as sub-appellations in Napa. So Atlas Peak is southeast Napa. It's this vineyard is about 1,350 feet in elevation. We sit just, Atlas Peak itself is above the fog line, but probably there are times where we're like at the fog line. It tends to run a little, maybe 10 degrees cooler in Fahrenheit than the rest of the valley or the valley floor. So we tend to have like longer, lengthier hang time. So we're able to do that. But this wine is my favorite wine to drink. I think it's one of the prettier wines that I make. It's a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon. It's about 84%, I believe, with 8% Merlot and 6% Petit Verdot. And that vineyard, I think it was planted in 2006 and began producing in 2009. So it started out like very forest floor, but has kind of turned like, it always had like forest floor, black tea, dark fruits, but it's kind of turned like floral, more fruit forward, a little more like white floral, still the black tea to it. Anyway, it's one of my favorites. I think it's nice to show because it's one of those microclimates that we talk about, and one of the soil up there is just basically rock, volcanic rock. There's not really much soil to it. So it's one of those 33 plus soil variations or soil types in the Napa Valley. So I just wanted to share that, show this wine.
Well, thank you very much. What I adore about all of these wines, and by the way, again, an outstanding wine, both a pretty, very pretty bottle and a very pretty, as you say, gorgeous, stunning wine as well. And what I love about what all of you have managed to do is really showcase and represent that difference of what Napa can offer. You know, it's not just big oak bomb wines. Every single one of these is so elegant. Every single one of these is so unique and so diverse. And that is what Napa truly allows with, as we said, all of those different microclimates. Now, I want to go back to just talking about, first of all, the favorite food pairing that you would have with each wine. And then there are a couple more questions. Now, there have been questions flying in left, right, and center in our chat here. So I do apologize if not everyone's questions are read out at the very end. And first off, let's just go back to our wines in order. Now, we go back to Ehlers Estate and we talk about our Sauvignon Blanc, our Thothy B, as we say in England. I won't be doing that again during this panel discussion. What do you think would be the best food pairing to go with this? I'll be disappointed if it's not Spanish. No, I'm kidding. It can be anything. It can be anything.
You're going to be disappointed. I mean, I think it's this Sauvignon Blanc. This is the 2019 Ehlers Estate Sauvignon Blanc. It comes from our estate. We only have planted 2 acres. But I with Sauvignon Blanc, I like fermentation in different vessels. So I ferment a little bit in new oak, used oak, concrete, stainless steel. So this is a blend of those fermentation and aging. Not a lot of long aging in this vessel. So there's a little bit of that creaminess coming from that lees treatment that is very mineral, it's very fruity. And, Sauvignon Blanc's clone wine in Santa Elena, it gives you that kind of tropical notes, but it's still, it has a lot of things going on. I don't know if you think the same, but it's very, very expressive aromatically. And the mouth is it has a really nice texture. So I normally try to drink it with or Mexican food or Thai food, Chinese, anything that is spicy, that it has that heat with the acidity, because it's very acidic wine, even you don't notice, because it feels actually sweet with just that fruit going on it. So it pairs perfectly with the spiciness and the heat from this kind of fruit. So, I mean, I had it with tacos, even fish tacos with a spicy sauce, or Thai food, even with ramen, a very spicy, hot ramen. That broth with the acidity of the Sauvignon Blanc. I had really good experience. I just love the Sauvignon Blanc with this kind of.
You're making me think of it. So I lived in San Francisco.
Just try it.
Years. I know it sounds amazing, and I think you're spot on. When I lived in San Francisco, there was a place that I used to go to that did, oh my goodness, Carne Asada tacos. Seriously, yeah. and the soft tacos, and they put the spicy sauce on. It just works so well with Sauvignon Blanc. It really did. So fantastic answer. Right, Kale, over to you with your lovely Syrah. Here we go.
Sure. So, so this Syrah is, it's a cool climate Syrah, so it has really good acidity, really good minerality, but it also has a bit of savoriness to it. And that savoriness makes me want to pair it with other savory foods, specifically duck. Duck fat, anything, I would say duck confit with this particular vintage. This is a little bit spicy, it's a little bit peppery, but it's got a savory component to it, a little bit gamey component to it, it can pair with a more of a red meat as well, but I prefer it with duck, something a little bit lighter that lets the duck as well as the wine speak. This is a beautiful vineyard, and I don't like to overshadow it with anything. So I really try to express the primary flavors of the Syrah that's grown there, the old vine Syrah, and it can have a lot of kind of deep boysenberry and maybe some more floral, a little bit stemmy components. I like to do it with a little bit of whole cluster. I ferment this in foudres, which is very traditional to do in the Rhone. Not as traditional to do, I would say, here in Napa, but large oak tanks that don't actually impart any oak to the wine per se, but definitely softens it because this wine can be tight when it's young.
Am I allowed to have it with Peking duck pancakes with hoisin sauce, spring onion, and cucumber? Am I allowed to do that? Because I really want to do that. Yeah.
Yes, you're allowed. You're allowed.
I adore it, and I will be doing that this weekend. I just have a thing right now for these duck pancakes. They're amazing. They really are.
Sounds delicious.
Oh. Well, enough about my duck pancakes. Let's move on to Crocker&Starr with Evyn. Tell us what goes with this beauty.
Yeah, I mean, Kale kind of took the duck right out of what I was going to say, because I think I also agree that the Cab Franc would go well with kind of a slight gaminess, but not overwhelming gaminess. So maybe, kind of New Zealand venison would go well with that as well, but something to kind of match kind of the elegance and the leanness of a meat than an overwhelmingly kind of duck is very fatty, but in the sense of kind of flavorful, overwhelming fat would maybe overpower this wine, but it's super floral. It's very spicy. So even, like a grain forward, beautiful salad would kind of go with this wine as well. Like something having to do with just a hearty kind of quality salad would epically go with this wine. But yeah, I lean towards the duck aspect, just because that's typically what I have with it. And Peking duck is probably up there with one of my most favorite foods of all time. So sign me up anytime that you want to go get Peking duck with me. I'm on board.
Why don't we do a Zoom Peking duck where we all order it and just eat it with each other on Zoom?
I'm on board.
Yeah, I think that's another fantastic suggestion. And I was also thinking about like a creamy chicken mushroom with a really cracked black pepper on there as well. Oh, and we've got a lot of people in the audience also saying that they're getting rather hungry. So we'll give them one more because we need to. With Where is Lobo? Here it is. Right, Wolf Vineyards, Victoria. What are we working with on the food side?
So for me, I eat out quite a bit, but one thing, I love food and I love wine, but sometimes I don't even make the connection until I actually take a sip and I'm like, wow, that goes really well. And so one thing that I really enjoy is there's an Italian restaurant that makes it's ciccioli, so it's a really fatty pork. And it reminds me of, I don't know, like twice cooked pork or carnitas or something, but it's like fatty, salty. So I'd say anything with fat and salt, it just like takes the wine to the next level for me. So.
Oh, pork belly. Yeah. Is that what you guys would call over in America? Do you call twice cooked or triple cooked pork? Is that like pork belly or is that something different?
It's not cooked twice. So it's actually gently cooked.
Like a rillette, right? Like
okay, I've got you.
But for I think like a Mexican dish, I would say carnitas because that's a twice cooked pork. But like a pork rillette or something, or a duck rillette. And
I love it. I love it. I'm being naughty because I'm meant to be doing this fasting diet right now, but that's clearly not happening tonight, is it? But it's all very much worth it. I'll tell you that. Well, thank you very much, all of you. In fact, Victoria, did you have anything else to add to that? I don't want to cut you off. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
There was a message just on Black Lives Matter, and I just kind of wanted to just being here in Napa, and because we've been under lockdown with the COVID, so I haven't really been out as much, but being out in Napa or going into work, it's not really a discussion that happens. I have friends that will text me and, with their concerns or just expressing just their concern for me or what I may be going through. The question was like, what is it like to be in this field with, like it's predominantly white male, a lot of women. So I can't say, it's not so much as men anymore, but I recognize that. I don't say that I don't pay attention to it or that I don't feel it. It doesn't really bother me. I come from Seattle, and it's kind of like there are a lot of like relationships that are interracial, or we don't blend together, but it's not as much, there's not as much of a separation or dividing line. So when I'm here, I don't really pay so much attention. Sometimes I'll find myself like in a room of like a sea of white people, and I'll think like, oh my God, like I'm the only one here. But as like, that's when I first moved here. And now, you know, I go to tasting rooms and I'll see like more people like me now that are working, you know, pouring wines. You have Brown Estate that have been here before I was here, and they're downtown Napa. So they're like, you know, out in the open, and I see a lot more tourism coming through. So I think there's more exposure to Black people, you know, like the wines before. I didn't think, you know, like when I got into this, I'm like, there's no one like me. I was aware of that. And I, you know, I knew that going in, and I was okay with that. I'm not bothered. No one's been rude to my face ever. So I'm okay for right now. I don't really know what's going on, like the climate of Napa, because we've been at home, you know, so I'll leave it.
Well, I'm glad that, thank you for answering that question. I'm glad that you brought that up as well, because I think it is an important topic. It is a very important topic. And I think that in the drinks world, especially, there is, in my mind, there is a lot more that can and should be done. And, you know, we on the Three Drinkers side have been trying to delve into all the stories and the history of where Black people have had a significant impact on the world of the drink. And Uncle Nearest, for example, so this is more on the spirit side, but it's a story of Jack Daniels. And there's a gentleman called Uncle Nearest, Nathan Green, who was responsible for charcoal filtering. And that was a quintessential and fundamental component to the creation of bourbon and whiskey. So there are so many different things, historical, like stories and factual things that we as a universe and as humanity on this planet need to recognize and need to delve into more. So I would urge everyone watching to have a look online, look at the stories, read what's going on in the world when it comes to, you know, in this topic that we're talking about today, the drinks world specifically, because there are some incredible Black people who have had an incredible impact on the world that we live in and the processes that we have. So thank you for answering that. I appreciate that.
And I'd like to touch on that a little bit more. Thank you so much for Victoria for your words, because we're in a weird situation. The world has changed so quickly, and I think it's just a lot of whiplash. But you know, I'm proud to be on this panel today. I'm the only male winemaker on this panel. I just want to point that out. I also want to point out, you know, I'm mixed race, but you know, there's a lot of people of color on this panel, and I think that's a reflection of the Napa community. You know, we're so fortunate, you know, here in Napa. It's an international destination, and I think it is a true, and it is a reflection of an international destination, being that you know, we anyone can do anything here. You know, I'm half Asian. Like, there's not a whole lot of Asian people in the wine industry either. And, you know, we are free to be who we are here. And I'm just thankful that I'm a member of this community. And you know, I'm glad that we can bring it to the rest of the world and show and try to lead by example.
So I wanted to add as well, one of the things that I mentioned before is coming to Napa, the opportunities that you can have here. It's just because of the diversity. Nobody judge you. You can start from the start, like from scratch, like not knowing much about wine. And everybody's a community. They share with you, they teach you, you work hard, you get there. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, if you are brown, Black, you know, the color, your nationality, your language, even if you speak English or not. I came to Napa barely speaking English. So, I mean, is that diversity. And I want also to highlight that the Mexican community in Napa, like, we wouldn't be able to make the wines that we make without them. And they're hard workers, good culture, always positive. I mean, that's the diversity of Napa. It's just the wines, the diversity, the terroir, but also the people. So it makes us special, I think. It makes Napa special.
I like that. And I think that even though I'm across the pond, I'm gay and have Tourette syndrome. So I think it's great. We have a little bit of everything going on, don't we? Well, I would love to continue talking about this topic, by the way, because it is amazing. And I'm really happy and proud of the fact that we've delved into this tonight as well, rather than, not bringing it up. So well done, everyone. Again, thank you, Victoria, for bringing that up. I know that we have only got a couple of minutes left now because we technically got 1 minute, but we'll probably overrun a little bit. And I have got, really one more question from the main bulk of questions. And this one is for Evyn. And here we've got, where do you see Napa Valley in 10 years' time? So now we're taking that sense of place and we're pushing it into the future. So could you tackle that one for us, please?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I want to thank kind of everyone on this panel for bringing all of those hard topics to light and kind of shining a light on Napa and kind of how diverse it is. I know that I have always felt pretty comfortable here, and the community is just wonderful, and I hope everyone kind of feels that way, whether you're visiting or not. So again, thank you so much, and I hope that we can all continue to learn and just be better humans, and hopefully we can share that through our wines. So secondly, where do we see kind of Napa in 10 years? I hope we can continue to kind of on this path. I mean, I know climate change is a very serious topic of conversation, and everyone has the question of what's going to happen to Cabernet, because that's really as Kale said earlier, the king of Napa. So there's that question pops up a lot. Where's the climate going to be? Is it sustainable for those Bordeaux varieties? 10 years is not that far away. So, in the grand scheme of things, I still think that we're going to have kind of all of the wines that we have now. I think maybe more varieties will be planted, like Kale was saying before, maybe some different kind of varieties that we've never had here before that do better in warmer climates or, different climates at least. So that's going to be kind of a fun project for all of us who have an aspect in the vineyard to kind of bring that in and see what else kind of works and maybe differentiate kind of the Napa scene a little bit. But I don't think that much is going to change. I think maybe the style of wines are going to change a little bit. So do I think Cabernet will still reign supreme? I do. I think maybe the style will change a little bit just based on kind of the climate and what is going to happen. And it's really an unknown factor to all of us. Why wine is so cool is because it's a snippet in time. 2017 is completely unaware that we were going to have this extreme heat. And then all of a sudden kind of this fire incident. And that's scary, and every single year, we kind of have to guess on what's going to happen. So, I don't know what 10 years is going to bring, but it's not that far away. And I think we need to be super conscious of what we're doing to the earth, what we're bringing back to the earth, and what we're taking away from it to try and make this a better place and more consistent place.
Amazing. Does anyone want to add anything to that with it being one of our final questions? Great. I thought that was a fantastic answer. So thank you very much. Wow, well, this has been a really fun panel. Thank you so much, guys. This has been absolutely brilliant. It's amazing that we can kind of get to know you as individuals and your stories, as well as opening up these incredible, sense of place within Napa to everyone who's watching today. And again, going back to the fact that we have people from all walks of life and from different countries who are watching this today, people who may live in Napa and may, be total wine nerds like us. And we have people who are just beginning their journey and getting a sense of, what exactly is Napa wine. So I think that you've answered all those questions incredibly well. And this has been one of my favorite panels to moderate, I have to say. So thank you very much for coming on board and joining us today. to go this. I don't really want it to end, but sadly it has to. So,
We're gonna have duck after this, right?
well,
We're gonna get together another time.
Don't tell everyone; they'll all want to join as well. There's not enough duck to go around, people. No, but on a serious note, thank you ever so much. If you want to follow any of us on Instagram, my particular Instagram is Sypped, SYPPED. If any of you guys have social mediums you want people to follow you on, Evyn, anything you want to put forward?
At Crocker&Starr or Evyn CAM, so EVYN CAM would be appropriate.
Great. Laura?
Aquilao 79 or Ehlers Estate.
Fantastic. Victoria? Victoria's
Coleman.
like, oh God, what's my Instagram again?
Or Lobo Wines. How about at Lobo Wines?
There you go, at Lobo Wines. And Kale?
Yeah, at Kale Wines.
Fantastic. And don't forget Napa Vintners as well, everyone. Well, thank you ever so much for all tuning in tonight. It's been wonderful spending time with you all. I hope we've managed to get to quite a few of the questions there. I'm sorry if we weren't able to answer everyone's, but I'm sure that at some point in the future, we'll be doing something like this again. Have a lovely evening. Get your glasses at the ready and enjoy some of these lovely wines from Napa. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Cheers.
And now everyone, I think everyone now just slowly leaves.